What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Accelerate Your Life podcast. I am your host, Mallory Marks, and I am joined again today by another guest episode. Really, really excited for this one. I mean, I always am for all my guests, but today we are joined by Nathalie. I'm going to butcher this because I never say her last name out loud. Ascuncion?
You nailed it. You literally nailed it.
We're literally best friends, and I am still nervous to say her last name, but it's because we're like virtual best friends. So like, how often do I say your full name
I
out
can't.
loud? I don't know. Not,
Never.
but we are joined by Nathalie, and she is one of my favorite people, honestly, in the world. And she is our sales rep for EA, our enrollment specialist, but she's also become one of my closest friends. I always joke that like we've literally never met in person, but if I got married tomorrow, she would be one of my brides. We'd meet for the first time at my wedding, her being my bridesmaid. But for those of you guys who don't know Nathalie, I met her at a pretty unique time in her life, where she was kind of transitioning from being in a corporate role to figuring out like what she wanted to do, and now has created a life where she's nomadic, she's traveling all the time, she works from anywhere she wants, and it's so cool. So we're going to get into that. But the other thing just about her, you guys will probably be able to tell from this episode, is she's so articulate. I remember that the first time I met her and was kind of interviewing people for the sales role, and met her, and I was just like, this girl's so smart and so well spoken. So I'm really excited to see what we get from her today. But yeah, she went from corporate to remote sales. Now she travels pretty much 100% of the year, would you say?
100% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Full
Yeah. You
traveler.
don't even have like a home anymore, right?
You know, I joke all the time that I'm actually homeless
You're so
because I
funny.
am. Technically, I'm homeless.
She is homeless. She just gets to go from Airbnb to country. It is so cool. So today we're going to dive into that, all about kind of creating the life you want, taking a big leap of faith, gaining freedom, because obviously it sounds all glamorous, but there was probably, I'm sure, a big, in between time where it was scary, it was risky. How do you get there? So there's so many different ways I think that this podcast episode could go, will go. I don't really have anything planned, so we're just going to dive right in and kind of see where it takes us. But before we dive into all of that, I do ask my guests one question to start off, same question. And just because this is the Accelerate Your Life podcast, we like to find that, the positivity, what, is going well in life, all of that. I want to ask you, what is just one thing that you love right now about life?
I was actually reflecting on this morning, and I think the ability and the freedom to be able to slow down, and that's something that I've really learned over the last year and a half to 2 years of my life, is that slowing down to speed up is so necessary, and we don't have to be so obsessed with the hustle all the time. So I'm really loving that because right now I'm in Montenegro, and it's definitely a very slow pace of living, I'll be honest. And I'm learning to embrace it. I'm learning to be present in this moment and slowing down to speed up.
I will say the universe works in the weirdest ways because I needed to hear that today personally. I have been actually struggling with the fight against slowing down, I think, for a long time. And you know this as my friend, but the last couple days, especially, I've had some gut and intuition feelings of just like what I kind of maybe should be doing more so with my time, but it be really going against the grain of like hustle culture and the way we've been. I think especially just like people like us who want to succeed and, accomplish all these great things, and that's all great. And you need to have that drive in life. But then on the flip side, we never really appreciate slowing down or take the time to slow down and enjoy the fruits of our labor, as people would say. So I'm glad you just said that because it's like what I've been needing to hear and recognize too, is the universe is sending me some signs. But no, I love that for you. Okay, dumb question. Where's Montenegro?
It honestly is not really that dumb of a question because truthfully, I didn't even really know until recently. But it's one of the Balkan countries, so it's like attached. It's next to Croatia.
Okay. Oh yeah. And you've loved Croatia, haven't you?
I Yes, I was actually pleasantly surprised. People were telling me that it wasn't. I don't know. I was kind of getting a mixed bag of opinions, and this is my whole thing: is I'm gonna go regardless because I can't depend on other people's opinions. I have to figure it out on my own, and I had the best time there. The best time.
It's so on my list. I really want to go to Croatia. Also, if you guys, we said she's homeless, but if you didn't realize where her home was prior, based on what she just said, big, she's from Canada. But okay, so I want to dive right into this and just kind of even start from the beginning of like how we got here, how you got to this place where you're literally working, making money, and traveling all around the world. So start at the beginning. Like when did you know? I mean, I guess this even we have to start back even further of like what your career was before all this. But I really want to know like when did you know you were going to try to shift your life to this? Was this something that was gradual? Or did you just think about it one day and or like, or did it just kind of smack you in your face of like, oh, I hate what I'm doing now. Like I would love to just know like how we kind of got here.
Yeah, totally. So my entire background is actually retail sales. I was a sales manager for 13, almost 14 years. And I started working in retail and customer service when I was in high school. I think I was like 16 or 17. And I remember one of my bosses, my managers, said to me, "You have great leadership potential." At 17 years old, I think that that really shaped how I approached the rest of my working career. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. Someone sees potential in me. I'm going to take this and run. And I did. I honestly, in every role that I was in, I really worked really hard to step into some sort of management role. So I went to school for fashion management. And when I was 21, graduated. I had a pretty solid job lined up as an assistant manager for a really big Canadian clothing brand, and I thought that I had made it. I was like, I'm so accomplished, 21 years old, working 40 hours. That was honestly the goal, and I feel like that is really what society teaches you, right? Is to go to school,
Mhm.
work really hard, get a full-time job. So I had all of that, but I always had a gut feeling that that was not what I wanted to do forever. I was really passionate about it because my roles were always within sales management and people development. So if you think about it, kind of transferable to what I'm currently doing, right? And I love that. I've been really fortunate to work for some really big established brands, but it was just that feeling of, I know that this is going to have an expiration date. And so I actually gave myself a lot of deadlines. So I was like, okay, I'm doing this and I'm actually enjoying it right now. By the time that I'm 24, I'm going to figure out what it is that I really want to do with my life. And then 24 rolled around and I was still in that role. So I was like, okay, well, it's okay. 20 by 27, I'm going to have everything figured out. Then by 30, and time just kept passing. And I just think that a lot of people get into that headspace of getting really complacent, really comfortable, like things aren't bad enough. But I
Mhm.
really had this feeling of, I know that I want to do something else. There's almost like a level of delusion that comes with stepping into like an entrepreneurial role, if you
Oh
think
yeah.
about it. No one else thinks like you, no one else sees it for you, no one else necessarily believes in you. But I always just had this feeling like I'm meant for more. And so I had explored a lot of different options because I knew really what I wanted. I'm very much like a long-term thinker. So I knew eventually, and I think everyone that knows me knows this about me, but the one thing that I'm looking forward to the most is eventually to become a mom and to, settle down, have a family. I'm very traditional in that way. And so thinking long term, I'm like, I know that this is not really going to be conducive to me being able to be present. And I will say presence for me is probably one of my biggest whys. I didn't want to have to sacrifice holidays and having to work really late nights. Christmas in retail,
Mhm.
non-existent. You don't have the luxury or the freedom to be able to just, not work weekends. And so thinking long term, I just knew that I needed to find an alternative source of income. And I had tried a couple different things, nothing really stuck. And to answer your earlier point, did it kind of smack me in the face? It was a combination of the two. It was very gradual. I knew that I was really comfortable and I knew that I needed to do something out of my comfort zone in order to get different results. But I vividly remember working at one of my last jobs and I was so miserable there. I mean, truly such a toxic working culture. I despised my boss. And I remember standing at work I vividly remember having a thought, there has to be more to my life than this. There just has to be. And I know that there is. And so that to me was almost like a wake up call. And I started researching I had always kind of been looking and I had said yes to so many different opportunities. I discovered the world of remote sales. And so I started looking into it and it seemed like something that I could potentially be really good at. Also something that allowed me the autonomy, the freedom to be able to work from wherever I wanted. Like I knew the checklist that I was looking for in like my dream job, if you will. And it checked off all of my boxes. And I did have to get to that point where I was like, this is the last year that I'm going to be talking about changing my life. This is going to be the last year that I'm going to have this be my problems. And so I do think that for a lot of people, you do have to kind of get pissed off about your situation. You do need to be
Yeah.
driven to the point, like, I'm so fed up with my situation. And I know that the only person that is able to change this is me. You have to have that awareness, and you have to be able to call yourself out on some of the your own BS, right? And so I definitely did have that moment. And I was like, this is last year. This is last year that I'm going to complain about my situation. I'm going to go all in. And so that's exactly what I did. The following, like 4 months later, I invested into mentorship, and I said, I'm burning the boats. I'm going to make this work.
And the
Not
ships.
because that's, yeah. And that's also the thing too. I think it's because I did have a lot of, I was super comfortable at my job, I'll be honest. So I just knew, like, even if I fail at this, realistically, I still have an income. But I think that that's also a mentality that held me back for the vast majority of my
Totally.
20s. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I ended up here because, yeah, I got into remote sales and I was kind of, I was on a couple of different offers, making very inconsistent income, I'll be honest. And it was not easy in the slightest. And then I was, again, just like looking for something that was a little bit more stable. And our mutual friend introduced me to you because you were looking for someone. And so, honestly, I initially took this role out of desperation. I was like, I need to try whatever. I just need to try because I really needed to leave my last offer. And I honestly would never have thought, like, I've really created a home here, I will say.
Oh yeah.
So, it's one of those things where, yes, it was kind of serendipitous how we connected, and how, I honestly didn't really have that high of expectations. And yeah, here I am. I'm like, EA for life. Like,
Oh yeah,
I'll
we are,
never
you created a home and you're stuck forever. No, I mean, and even some of, like, obviously we've been friends for years now and you've been here for a long time, but some of that story I didn't even know bits and pieces of. And you could have fooled me because when you came to, us, I thought you had tons of, experience. And that just goes to show, though, like, the effort I mean, you do have a lot of natural skill, but I know you poured in time and energy and effort to get good at this role. And there's so many, from that whole, everything you just said, there's so many directions we could take this. But I think that one thing I really want to talk about is that decision to basically burn the ships, right? And, not have that option of safety to return to, because I think that that is where a lot of people never, they get stuck for so long because they're unhappy with where they're at and they want to kind of try to take that risk and make the change, start that business, whatever. But they also don't let go of the safety net, which then keeps you giving 50% to both things, right? And never getting to give that full 100 to the thing that you want your life to turn into. And so I would love for you to talk just a little bit more about, I guess, how you made that decision to eventually finally just burn those ships, and how, or burn those ships, and what changed the moment you decided, when you didn't have that safety net anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that that's such a great point. For me, I ended up leaving. So I invested in mentorship and I found a role that was full time. And I had asked my mentor at the time, hey, I have this opportunity, but obviously, for anyone that doesn't know, everything is commission based, right? So it was a full time opportunity. And I asked him, do you think that I should take this? And he said, no, I recommend that you transition properly out of your 9 to 5. I'm super stubborn. So I said, hear ya loud and clear. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to quit. And then I'm going to go all in. And so this is another thing that I really wanted to mention, is that obviously there are going to be ups and downs. I thought that this was like my victory story, was able to quit my job in 30 days and I was going to ride off into the sunset and be super successful. Was not the case. Literally 3 weeks after I made this decision to leave my full-time job, which, by the way, I thought was, I had made it because it was a 9 to 5, weekends off. Like, in my mind, I thought that I had, like, finally cracked the code. Turns out that that wasn't the balance I was looking for. Um, I ended up leaving, and 3 weeks after I got into that role, I literally, half of the team got let go, and as one of the newest members, I was one of them. And so I could have very easily gone back to my, it had been 3 weeks. I could have very easily gone back to my old boss and said, hey, didn't work out. She would have taken me back in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat, she would have. But I said, no, going back to the commitment that I made to myself, and this is something I really want to mention, is I decided to make a commitment to myself. I'm going to make this work. I went back to all the things that I promised myself. And I think a lot of times people, they don't follow through on promises that they make to
Mhm.
themselves. That's why you lose so much trust within yourself, right?
Mhm.
I really didn't want to be one of those people. I wanted to work out of integrity and say, I'm someone that says to do this to other people. I also want to be one of those people that follows my own advice, really walk the walk. And so I didn't. I was like, I'm going to make this work no matter what. So yeah, was ended up just kind of taking offers left, right, and center, just kind of seeing what um, I could kind of make work. But I stayed super committed to the goal of I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this work because this is a commitment that I made to myself. And so it did take a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of trial and error, being on offers that I absolutely just did not resonate with, dealing with a lot of like sales bros, honestly, a lot of that stuff. I put up with all of that because I just knew, again, going back to the delusion
Yeah.
point that I made earlier, I was like, I just know that I am going to the version of myself that I visualized. I was like, I know that if I can imagine her, it's because she's somewhere in here. I
Yeah.
just need to unlock her. I just need to get there. But it goes back to that decision and just having integrity. If you say that you're going
Yes.
to do something, you have to do it.
That what you just said there at the end, as far as if you can imagine that person, it has to exist. I actually read something yesterday in my kind of morning meditation and journaling that brings us back to the reminder that everything that exists ever in the world starts from a concept of it, right? A thought. And if you can conceptualize something, then it exists. And so I think that that just idea of if you can picture this person who's successful, you can see it, you can see the life. It
Uh-huh.
literally exists. It's possible. We have to take the steps to get there. And also this kind of brings me to talking a little bit more on that entrepreneurial delusion, because this is a very real phenomenon. I mean, truly, like, I remember calling my dad when I first was like, I'm gonna make this coaching business work. I remember telling him, like, I know you're gonna think I'm crazy for saying this, but mark my word, by April of next year, and it was like April of that year, I was like, I'm gonna be making 15K a month from doing this. And at this point, I'm making like two. Like, I was so ignorant to how broke I was at this time. And he was like, okay, cool, whatever, Mallory. Like, yeah, you're delusional. I did it the next month, not even
Mhm.
April of next year. But the only reason is because I was like, I'm going to do it. And then so I sat out and I did it. And like, you have to have, I think, that delusion. But I think what that delusion really is it is intuition. I think it's the feeling that we have of what's
Mhm.
possible. And you've talked a lot about so far of a lot of decisions and things that were kind of more so you did not because it like logically made sense to people on the outside, but because you just had this intuition and gut feeling. And maybe at the beginning, right, it took a little bit longer to listen to that. But I'd love for you to just talk a little bit more about how you decipher the difference between intuition, what that, feeling is telling you, and then something that is maybe not the right move, and like how you have gotten better at learning to listen to that intuition.
Yeah, I think that this is something, I mean, over the last year, especially of me traveling full time, because I've been traveling full time for basically a year, exactly a year. And everything that I've done over the last year has just been me following my intuition. Doesn't often make sense to a lot of people from the outside looking in, but it makes sense to me. And that's the only thing at the end of the day that really truly matters to me. But I think that I've developed along the way a lot of awareness around, and I don't know if I have any particular advice around developing self awareness. I think it takes a lot of time. You have to just be still, drown out the noise, get really curious about what you're feeling, where it's coming from. But I've developed a lot of awareness around what is my comfort zone and
Mm.
um, what is my comfort zone, and also what is like doing something out of alignment, because I think that alignment is one of those
Mm.
buzzwords that we hear all the
Yep.
time. We're like, oh, it just doesn't feel in alignment. It's like,
Mhm.
are you maybe just being challenged and being forced to grow and you're resistant to that? I think I've developed a lot of awareness around that. And so I've just gotten really good at trusting, like, I think that this is something that I want to explore, whether it works out or not. I'm not going to know the lesson until I actually do it. And so I've invested a lot into myself over the last couple of years. I think that that's something that has really helped me also, um, develop some of this awareness and really get support. And I think some of the best people that every successful person has coaching, I will say. So I've invested a lot into getting coaches and really learning to trust my intuition. So I would say develop awareness and do it. And then I think that once you have that awareness, it becomes a lot easier to have that discernment of, okay, I think that this is out of alignment, or what is a lesson here that's forcing me to get out of my comfort zone and really grow within this area.
Yeah,
So
and
I
I
don't.
also no, that was I answered it perfectly, and I also think, like, something you said earlier about, people not following through on what they say, and then therefore not being able to trust themselves, right? I think that that is where it then can get very hard to also trust literally trust your gut and trust your intuition, is because if you've also let yourself down with other things that you've said in the
Mhm,
past. "Oh, I'm gonna, I'm gonna lose this weight. I'm gonna do go to the gym." And obviously I'm relating this back to what I predominantly talk about all day with clients is the health and fitness side of things. But I'm gonna make this jump in my career. And you just constantly say these things and then don't follow through. You're gonna not trust yourself. And then when you have these gut feelings, you're also gonna not be able to trust that
mhm,
intuition, that gut feeling, and you're not gonna listen to it. And I think that's where you stay stuck. So it all
yeah,
really just comes back to, I mean, at some point you have to stop that cycle, right? And like follow through on what you say you're gonna do and begin to trust yourself more and more. Um,
mhm,
Another thing I kind of want to pick your brain on, because this is something I've struggled with in my years of entrepreneurship. And obviously, as I got more settled in and really, EA became a very legit business. And I also moved and surrounded myself with people who do similar jobs to me. This has went away. But I think something I struggled with a lot at the beginning was feeling like I wasn't doing feeling like I wasn't maybe working hard enough, even though I was working probably more than other people, but because it didn't look the same, oh, I'm sorry guys, let me turn off my notifications here. But it didn't look the same, right? Like I wasn't necessarily working 9 to 5. Sometimes I go to the gym from 11 to 1 in the middle of the day, but I also start work at 7 a.m. and I finish at 7 p.m. But because it
mhm.
didn't look the same, I really struggled with not feeling like I was, yeah, working hard enough, people wondering what other people thought about me, feeling like there's more I could do. And so especially if as you've entered into this phase, like you even said at the beginning, where you've learned to slow down a little bit more and maybe you're not taking calls some of the day. And how have you navigated, and was that ever a challenge to you, of kind of that disconnect, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah. I mean, I will tell you that when I initially joined EA, I was doing a couple of different roles, right? I mean, EA was my full time, but I have always attached so much of my value to my performance, how hard I work. And honestly, it's weird. I think with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like, oh, I'm so busy. I have this, and this going on today. And they're like, oh my gosh, I have the same thing plus this. Like it's a competition
Oh,
of
it's a
who.
badge of honor. How stressed are you? You went
Yeah.
like, yeah.
And also like how many calls are on your calendar. It's like a weird competition between people who are in sales, entrepreneurs, whatever the case might be. And honestly, I do believe this. I think that it does have to come in seasons because you would not have been able to create EA without that season of harvesting, right? Working really, really hard, putting in work. And I'll be honest, like I know for whatever comes next, there is going to be a season where I'm probably going to have to go back to working, more than 2 hours a day. I'm sure I'm sure of it. It comes in seasons,
Totally.
but I do think it's that comparison trap because we're looking at, okay, well, she's doing this. Should I be doing that? Or we're comparing, our chapter 10 to someone
Yeah.
else's chapter 1 or someone else's chapter 1,000. Like we don't know. I don't think that you can judge anyone based on the chapter that you're walking into their life because we don't know what they've gone through or how hard, like that struggle that they've gone through. We don't know any of that and we don't see any of that, right? And a lot of times people just don't even care. They're just kind of judging you based on where you're at right now. But I think for me, I've really learned to establish, well, what is it that I want? I don't want to build a life that looks happy on the outside. I want one that feels happy to me. And I don't care how it looks to other people. I think, especially, I mean, I'll talk about sales specifically, but people are constantly talking about, and it's the goal for most sales reps that they want to have a stacked calendar. They want to be, and I think, again, there was a time where there is a season where you need to do all of that. But I realized is that really what I want? And, are other people's income goals, do they have to be mine?
Mhm.
Do other people's any goal that they have, do they have to be mine? And I got really laser focused on what is it exactly that I want. And truthfully, it's evolved as I have evolved. It's definitely changed, but I think it's being able to recognize what is it that you want? What are the avenues that I can take to get there? And you also have to recognize when you've arrived, because I think that there's
Yeah.
something so beautiful about knowing that there's always going to be another level to unlock. We're never fully done learning and growing. And I think that that's beautiful. But I do think that sometimes you need to take a step back, pause, and realize, wow, I've accomplished so much. And am I happy with how much I've accomplished? Like, have I arrived at a version of success that I previously dreamt about 2 years ago? And very often the answer is yes, right? So I think that we just need to give ourselves a little bit more credit and not constantly feel like we have to keep up with another version, another person's version of what success is.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just said there of the asking ourselves, like, have I arrived at a person and a version in a life that I am happy with is big. I think like and this may go down a rabbit hole of tangent of my own kind of where I've been struggling, but I think like the disconnect where I struggle is obviously like in reality almost anyone would say they would love to not have to work, right? And just not have to even sales reps who, yeah, they're like, right, because they want the money. But if you said, oh, you don't need the money, you've got it all, like, would you still choose to work? Most people would be like, no, I want to chill and just like lay by the pool, whatever. And where I've been struggling is at what point am I maybe being lazy? Or at what point am I like not only doing something because it's what society says. And like specifically for me, right? Like I'm 27 years old. I went through that season for about 3 years that Natalie's talking about of 80 hours a week, grind, 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 like run myself into the ground to build EA to where it is. And now I have an awesome team and I still do work really hard, but it's nowhere near that same amount. And I could have a little bit more freedom if I wanted, but I'm 27 and I catch myself feeling like we're supposed to be working. Like people are supposed to work. You're supposed to work, at least 40 hours a week. Like you don't just get to like sit and do nothing. There's no reason I need to be at 27 and not and laying out at the pool in the middle of the day, right? And so I struggle. I'm like, am I just being lazy and like not wanting to work, or do I have to not conform to that, standard? And I don't know, it's just a hard, and I feel like you're in a similar ish position, right? Where like, I will say Natalie, like it may look, like she's traveling all in the middle of the day, but she's also sometimes taking calls at 1 a.m. her time because she's working East Coast hours taking these, US based calls. So it does look different to everybody on the outside, but you also have experienced a lot more freedom. So yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of where my struggle has been. And I don't know if you've kind of fought that internal battle in your head at all of taking more time off. And is that wrong that we're doing that at 27, 30 years old? Like,
It's not. And the thing is that things have just, society has evolved so much. I mean, I don't think that having an online coaching business would have been something that existed
oh
like 10
no,
years. Are you joking?
definitely
That's
not.
crazy. So I think, and it's what I will tell you is that I have met a lot of entitled people in my time. Not that I'm old, but in my lifetime, I've met a lot of entitled people. And entitled people always think that they are lazy, so they feel like they're entitled to all these different things, whereas I will say that high performers feel like they feel like they're never doing enough, and they feel like they are being lazy when they never feel like they're doing enough. And so I think, again, there was a moment of clarity that I had where I was like, okay, I'm really loving, I'll just share, when I was in Mexico last year, I I felt like I was actually showing up better in my role here because I was finally doing the things that I really wanted to be doing. I wanted to be traveling, which I was able to do. I wanted to take time to really explore the cities that I was in, and I felt like I was showing up better. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I wonder if this is something worth exploring. And so I did. Remember back in January, it was like a little innovative. I was like, I would love to make more money in less time. So we introduced a couple new things within EA. And I feel like it actually helped me just be all around better. And so I don't think that it's a bad thing necessarily to, yeah, take time off. It's something that I definitely did struggle with, but I think again, my priorities kind of shifted, and I don't know the exact moment that it happened, but I know I was like, okay, it turns out I actually value time more than money, whereas previously
Mhm.
it was the other way around. And I think that we're going to go through seasons, and yeah, so things have changed so much that now you don't necessarily have to work as much. You're able to build a lot of financial independence. I mean, look at what you've created here is like unbelievable, right? And we're talking, so many more people are talking about early retirement now because there are just so many different options. So I think it's really breaking that idea,
Yeah.
that matrix, if you will, of okay, we have to really work really, really hard until we're 65, 70. We don't have to. We really don't have to. And you're not married to one particular thing either, right? Like if you feel like you want to go through a season where you want to work really hard again to achieve something else, you can decide to do that anytime. I think that's a beautiful thing about what we do, is that we're constant. There's an abundance of opportunity, an abundance of, we can reinvent ourselves as many times as we want, which is not really a luxury that our parents had, I don't think. So I also, I think that that's also something to be grateful for.
Yeah, 100%. I think that is exactly where I struggle, is that matrix of, yeah, I'm supposed to work until I'm a certain age. We're supposed to work a certain amount of week. Like
Mhm.
that is how life works. And I'll have days of, being like, okay, that's how it needs to be. And then I'll have days I'm like, why? Why does it need to be that way? Like we get a certain amount of time times the one thing you can't have back. And what is this all for, right? It's just supposed to be to enjoy. So like if I've gotten to a point where I have that freedom and ability to not have to work, and for me it's will say, for me I think it's a relationship with money thing that I really need to kind of work on, and I'm realizing like it's this fear of it running out and all of this that I think is kind of the biggest piece, which actually I'm curious for you. I do want to ask because I know that's something like we've talked about. And I will say, I feel like our generation is doing a lot better job of talking about money, whereas it used to be
Mhm.
extremely taboo, especially for women. And that's just why I think that I think we're in that generation where we're suffering from that, but we're also realizing it. So we're beginning to change it. So like
Mhm.
hopefully for the next generation it's going to change. But I think the reason that like we maybe have this mindset and poor relationship with money is because it was never talked about. So if it's
Mhm.
okay with you, I'd love to like maybe talk about it a little bit because I know it's something
Yeah.
that I have personally talked about. And I know it's something that you've had struggled with a little bit. So I'm sure that affected your decision to take these risks, change your job, try to go into remote sales. And then now, as we've talked about, like not work as many hours per day per se. How has that changed, and how did you kind of navigate through to get to the place you are today with your relationship with money? I know it's very vague, but I would love to kind of just keep it open for you to answer.
Yeah. Well, again, like I've invested into learning how to heal my relationship with money. So definitely feel, for anyone listening, investing in yourself honestly is the single best investment, and it has the best ROI. So I knew that I had problems with my relationship with money because even though I was making a decent income, I also just I didn't really ever know how to manage my finances, to be honest. Like that's not something that's taught in school. And so I did struggle with that. And like I said, when I first started out in remote sales, I was making no money. Like I think that sometimes when I say that to people, they're like, "Oh, like you were not making a lot." I'm like, "No, like I was straight up not making any money." I remember so I started my career in remote sales. I guess it would have been, yeah, April 2021. In October of 2021, I was working on 3 different offers. So full time, and I made $800 as a full time closer. Okay, so I was making no money, and I think that that definitely impacted. Like I need to find roles where I'm able to make more money, but it was such a dichotomy because I would get into good roles, but I almost was like resistant
Mm.
to the idea that I could make, good money doing this. So it was like I knew that it was possible. I saw other people doing it, and I struggled to think that I was worthy of making it, but I also needed to make it so that I could, afford my lifestyle. So it was just a constant push and pull. And I really, when I invested into healing my relationship with money, that was really one of the first things that I did. It's like I wrote down all of the things, all of the stories that I had created around my beliefs around money. And a lot of it is very, very, very deep rooted, I will say. So even back to, how my parents handled money or talked about money, all these different things. And I asked myself, like, are any of these beliefs ultimately true? And the answer was no. None of these beliefs are even true. It was just a narrative that I created in my mind. So I really learned to release that. It's, still very much takes a lot of time, obviously, but I just realized, okay, well, money is what? It's just energy. Like you yes, be responsible, but it's just an energy thing. Like you spend it, you make more. Like, and also again, because we have, I will say, like, high income skills. We've learned high income skills. I just know that I always have the ability to make money if I ever needed to. So I've really gone out of that scarcity mindset because I know I've proven it to myself time and time again that all my basic needs are always going to be met, always, because I have a skill set, or I can literally hop on a call and get paid for it. But I also know that I've also taken steps to actually become a little bit more financially responsible, which is also another thing. I always know, like, I do have, I'm never going to be in that position ever again. So it was a motivation for me making $800. I refer to that story all the time because people think that I was so successful right off the gate. I was not. I was like broke as a joke. Okay. But yeah, I use that as motivation. Like, I'm never going to be in this situation ever again. What needs to happen, and really break out of that scarcity mindset. And that's how I live my life now. I just know that money comes and goes, but mostly it's coming. Like it always
Mostly it's
comes
coming. We
back.
got to keep it coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have learned just a lot from being your friend and, like just had my kind of like eyes opened and my relationship with a lot of different things, changed from being your friend as well. And I've watched you invest in many different mentorships for all different types of things, money, relationships, all different types of things. And that's been really inspiring too, because I can see the freedom that just not allowing the power of like money or stress of a job or time or anything hanging over your head has given you. Like, you are one of the least stressed, most carefree, just like joyful people I know. I mean, it is a rare day if I hear Nathalie, like, I don't think I've ever seen you in a bad mood. I've maybe seen you frustrated like 3 times ever. But I wouldn't even call that like, like in a bad mood or complaining or anything. And it's just, I see why. It's just because of you don't allow these things to have a hold on you. And that's
Mhm.
something I'm recognizing in myself, of a lot of things I grip so tightly, and like it causes you to white knuckle everything and like feel tense all the time. And like you don't tense up about like nothing has a grip on you. And it's really inspiring, and I've learned a lot from it. But
Yeah.
before we finish up, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I was just gonna say it's so funny because when I joined as a client here at EA, that that's one of the things that you guys ask, right? It's like, rate your stress levels on a scale of 1 to 5, and I was like, LOL,
You're
is there like a negative?
Yeah, you're probably the only person that's ever answered not like a 9.
I'm like, I'm not stressed.
I was
And
0.
also my rating your energy. I told Shiana, I was like, oh my gosh, my energy is like through the roof up until like 7 p.m. usually, but I'm like I have so much energy. But yeah, it's like you have to realize, and this is a mindset that I've developed. I'm like, if I can't control it, whether I'm stressed or not, it's not going to change the outcome.
Yeah.
So I might as well not be stressed out about it, because that's really only affecting me. And it's going to be the exact same outcome. That's why I might as well, I've definitely become much more woo woo over the last 2 years. I'm like, listen, I just,
Oh, I'm like getting there day by day. I mean, moving to Austin, like it's inevitable. I'm getting just a little bit more woo woo every day. But here I am, like nodding my head so intensely when you're like, stress only affects me. And meanwhile, I'm like the most stressed person, but we're working on it. We are working on it. But before we finish up, I wanted to just kind of get your little, like, you tie a bow on everything, because I know when people hear what you do, they learn about how much freedom it's given you. They see it, on social media, and you get asked all the time, like, how do I get into this? This looks awesome. So if a listener now is wanting to know kind of the same thing, what would be, maybe let's bring it down to 3 biggest, I'll just say, pieces of advice, because it doesn't necessarily need to be, maybe some are action steps, maybe some are advices about your mindset, but I would love to just hear from you the 3 things you would tell somebody they need to feel, they need to think. I don't know. Kind of leave that to you.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the first thing is you have to kind of be open to your life looking a little bit different, because I don't think that a lot of people wake up, or, no one's born and grows up wanting to be a sales rep. I don't think, anyways, or like a closer, what we call it in our industry, right? No
Well, it's
one,
so funny, not to interrupt you, but I always think about that all the time, but I'm like, who grows up even saying they wanna be like a anesthesiologist or like a
yeah,
just these random these yeah, you
yeah.
never know. These jobs don't exist, like, when you're a kid.
Precisely, precisely. So this is not ever something that I ever thought that I would get into, but I always knew that sales could be a vehicle. And that's exactly what it has been. It's a really allowed me to shrink the timeline to both my financial goals, my lifestyle goals. And so I think just being open to having your life look a little bit different is the first thing. I definitely think investing into yourself. So for me, really investing in a mentor really helped me in every facet of my life. I mean, mindset, learning how to build my network, learning how to build my personal brand, learning how to ultimately have better conversations. All of those things are things that I really needed. So I think investing in really good guidance and mentorship and leadership, learning from someone who has literally done what you have wanted to do. That's the fastest way to create success, is just to duplicate it. People try and overcomplicate it so much.
Mhm.
Um, and then the third thing that I would say is you just have to decide. And I think that that is a very vague term, but time and time again, we see it all the time over here. People make a decision, but they haven't actually made a decision, because then there's no follow through, there's no commitment. If they commit, it's, you commit one time. It's like you have to make the conscious decision to commit to that every single day, and start making decisions from a place of where do you want to be 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. Make decisions from that place and that mindset, versus using all of the excuses that are currently coming up for you as a reason to not do something. So, yeah, those are probably the three. I'm sure that there's so much more, but
Oh,
those are the
yeah,
three
I'm
big.
sure you could go on forever and ever. And this is kind of going to slightly go off topic, but the third thing you just said reminded me of a conversation that I had with a client yesterday. And just to round out, since we're kind of a fitness and health podcast, to round out with something fitness and health related. Um, when it comes to, I have to have this conversation with one specific client a lot, but I think a lot of clients, but I think the reason a lot of people struggle with even, the things they say they're going to do with their health, right? Like getting to the gym, all those things, is because they're making a decision in of how they feel in the moment, and not how the person they're trying to be would feel down the road. And the conversation specifically that I was having yesterday is that both things can be sometimes painful. Like in the context of what we're talking about too, like making that scary choice to leave your job, that's painful. But also getting stuck and going to that same job that you hate every day is painful. Getting out to the gym at 5 in the morning is painful. But being 20 pounds overweight, 40 pounds overweight in 6 months because you're not, is also painful. The challenge is that you're feeling the pain of going to the gym at 5 a.m. in the moment, and you're not feeling the potential pain down the road right now. And so you're going to make a decision based off of the pain you're feeling in the moment. Or like you're feeling, the pain of how hard it would be to say no, like to quit your job right now, but maybe, and like that doesn't outweigh the pain of like going to the job, but you have to think of like, how painful would it be if I don't make that decision? Like, and make the decision through the lens of that person who's 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years down the road, rather than in that very, very moment. And that's why it's like that immediate gratification thing, right? Like that
Yeah,
decision you make, you may not, it's also like the immediate pain, and you're making a decision based on the immediate pain rather than the potential future pain if you don't do something. That makes
100%.
sense from someone listening
It
on the other
no,
side.
no, it definitely does, because I think that that is, one of the biggest flaws in human nature, is that we think that we are making the easiest choice for us in the moment. We're this is easy, this is safe, but I promise you, it never is easy in the long run. And that's what I wish that more people thought about, is really zoom out and think about, is this really the easiest choice for me? Because what you have to do now to have an easier life in the future is far simpler, far easier, actually. And you're right, it's never going to be, it just feels bad right now because you don't know what you're comparing it to. But
Yeah. I mean, I have to tell myself this every day, like with my trying to be gluten free to fix my hormones. It is not easy to not have bread. I want it, but it is also not easy to be really effed up hormonally in 5 years if I'm like trying to get pregnant and can't.
Yeah.
So right now I need to do the thing that actually is easier, which would be not having gluten. Like, so then, being trying to fix a monumental problem in 5 years. So anyway, that was a personal little anecdote, but that's like, it's not easy, but you have to think long term of which one really is the easiest. So anyway, this was really, really great conversation. I think there's a lot of, no matter what somebody is looking for in this episode, if they're health fitness related, looking for a career change, there's a lot of, I think, tidbits from just life advice. So thank you for your wisdom, Natalie. Anything you want to finish out on and add?
No, I think, yeah, this was a great conversation. And thank you so much for having me. I think that here we definitely have an amazing community of women who just love it's a bunch of girls, which I really, really love. So much support, so much love. Everyone's rooting for each other. So thank you for having me because I
For
definitely
sure.
would
Well,
be.
and if anybody wants to follow all of your travels and all the exciting things you're doing, she literally has a professional photo shoot every day, and that's what her Instagram story consists of. So, you definitely should go check it out. Where can the people find you?
Probably, honestly, the only social media platform that I'm on is Instagram. I'm not cool enough
Same.
for TikTok. Okay, I'm just not cool enough for TikTok. But it's don't ask me why, but it's Pink Lip Society on Instagram, and yeah, you can follow all. I literally bring everybody. I document every second of my day. So
She
if you
does.
guys are itching to travel, you guys can travel with me via Insta
You
stories.
guys are even going to be like, what? She's not a travel blogger? Like, that's going to be her next job because basically she is. But anyway, thank you, Natalie. And thanks for listening, guys. Hope you have a great day.
Bye.